Well, hello and good afternoon. Welcome to our Canadian Virtual Recruiters panel today. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds here. I see some people coming on to the platform, so I'll wait for some people to continue to come on. In the meantime, just go over a few administrative things. You can post any questions that you have for the panel in either the event side or the stage side. And if something comes up, a question comes up, I'll moderate the questions over the next hour or so. If you're just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. We'll just wait for a couple of people to come on board here and make sure that we have all the right setup here as well. And we'll do a sound and video check as well to make sure that audio is working well. So again, if you're just joining, you haven't missed anything. There's the panel going to be starting shortly. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the event and the stage area as well. And nothing like live audio, right?
I have one of those too.
That's right. So if you have any, also what I'd like to say is if you are using a Chrome browser, that's the way to go. If you're using Internet Explorer or Safari, you may not get the right audio and video for this and functionality for the platform. So you want to be using Chrome ideally, and also don't use your phone. You're not going to get the same functionality using your phone either. Make sure to use a desktop or notebook, computer, or laptop to get you the right functionality and so on. So I'd like to welcome you today. I do see some people coming on. It's just after 4 o'clock on the Eastern area, Eastern time zone being Toronto here. We've got a great panel that we're going to share some tips with you. And again, if you're just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Today's event is presented by TorontoJobs.ca and TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca, and it's presented by Event Logic with a K.ca. You can also make sure to have a good, strong Wi-Fi and make sure your signal is good, because you'll be able to capture everything that we have here as well. And today's platform is more than just a Zoom webinar. We have more features, and I'll get into that shortly as well. Now, if you are having technical difficulties, it's more likely than not your computer rather than our platform. So here's what you can do. Make sure to close any browsers that you have other than this browser open. If that doesn't fix it, close this browser. And if that doesn't work, restart your computer. If it still persists, put a note in the chat and we'll try to help you out. But again, 99.9% of the problems aren't to do with our platform. They would have to do with your computer. Now, we have 1 hour on the panel. We do add on an extra 10 minutes at the end, so you can check out our expo area as well. And you can also live chat here as well on the right-hand side by going into the event or the stage chat, posting your information, saying hello, and asking any questions as well. You may be interested in a few of our upcoming other events. We have the Canadian Virtual Recruiters Conference happening on Tuesday, March 9th. We have the TO Tech Virtual Hiring Event on Wednesday, March 10th. So if you're in tech, you don't want to miss that. We have the Student Career Conference that happens on Thursday, March 18th. And the Canadian Virtual Career Conference that happens on Wednesday, March 31st. Now, if you are looking for a job, make sure to check out TorontoJobs.ca. We have a number of positions. You can visit the website to check them out. If you are an entrepreneur or thinking about starting up a business, you might want to visit TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca for upcoming events. And if there's other events that you're interested in finding out about, you can do so by visiting eventlogic.ca, logic with a K.ca. Or you can also visit TorontoJobs.ca/news, NEWS, for more information. Again, if you have any questions, you want to put them in the moderated area. And Marlon, I'm going to let you in right now, so it's good. We're going to have a good panel here. And you can also connect with TorontoJobs.ca by visiting all our social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And there's also a lot of great content on our TorontoJobs.ca YouTube channels. We work hard to get you content and speakers that we think you want based on our surveys and based on previous surveys. So if you have some feedback for us moving forward, by all means, share that with us as well. And I also wanted to thank, in advance of the event here starting, I want to thank all the panelists that I will introduce in a second here. And I also want to thank the team behind the scenes. There's a lot of people: Alex, Jesse, Rachel, Sandra, and Anne. So welcome panelists. Thanks very much for being here. And we've got a great lineup. So we're going to start just clockwise and do a quick introduction of each of you. You can introduce yourselves. And Marlon, thanks for getting on. We got our technical issues figured out, so that's good. Nice to meet you. So Leah Penrose is Spring Activator People Operations Manager and is based out of Vancouver. So Leah, why don't you introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do and your background in the recruiting space?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me again. Excited to be here. So I am the first People Operations Manager and first HR person to be hired for Spring Activator, Inc. They are an advisory, education, and company that is in the impact entrepreneurship space. So whether it's an incubator, accelerator, anywhere in that ecosystem, investors, we play around there. We're actually hiring for 2 roles right now. So if you are interested, I'll post that after. And I do everything under the people operations HR umbrella, and have done so at startups for my last 2 roles, and enjoy it immensely as I get to kind of play in all arenas and interact with many different types of people, internal and external. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Leah. Thanks for being on, and you've been on 1 or 2 other panels as well. So thank you for sharing, your experience and your information. And I'm sure people will get a lot of information from you and the rest of the panel. So Colleen O'Hara is Senior Strategic Recruiter. Colleen, thanks for being on, and perhaps you can share a little bit about your background and your experience in recruiting for job seekers and also other recruiters that may be watching.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. So my name's Colleen O'Hara. I'm a senior recruiter with Wood. So Wood is a global engineering consulting firm. So we have about 55,000 employees around the world. So we too, like Leah, have multiple vacancies on the go, but I don't know that I'll post them all, but I'd encourage you to visit our career site. I've been in recruitment for, oh my goodness, I think it's close to 25 years. And I have a blended background of agency as well as corporate recruitment. I'd say I likely am a specialist in the technical recruiting field. So the last several years, 10 plus years or so, I've been more involved in engineering and technical recruitment. At the senior level mostly. So I'm happy to be here. Did you want me to give tips right away, or we have certain time frames for that?
We'll come back. Yeah, just a quick introduction for now, and we'll come back. We're going to cover a lot of stuff today for sure.
Perfect.
So hold on to those great experience as well, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to share with people who are watching. And Marlon is Talent Acquisition Manager at BNP Paribas. And you are in Montreal, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, I am in Montreal. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I'm Marlon, actually. As Marc said, I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager for BNP Paribas in Montreal. So our head office is actually in Montreal. So we're hiring in Montreal if anybody is interested in relocating. So, we do close to 400 hires a year, roughly. So we're growing exponentially actually in Montreal. I hire mainly with my team in IT, banking, security, risk, compliance, name it, whatever makes a bank hold together. That's what we hire for. My background is actually mixed between corporate recruitment, agency recruitment, and RPO. So I've been on the 3 sides of things, and I have been the hiring manager myself. So happy to be giving advices today on how to actually get through this tough job market today.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being on. And sorry, Colleen, just coming back to you. Where are you located, Colleen? You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Coming off me. I'm in the southwest end, so Burlington is my office location.
Okay, so we've got a good cross section here across Canada, from Vancouver to Montreal to the Greater Toronto area. So good opportunities there. If you're just joining, we're about 10 minutes in. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. The panel: Colleen O'Hara, senior strategic recruiter; Leah Penrose is spring activator, people operations manager; and Marlon is talent acquisition manager at BNP Paribas in Montreal. So thanks. So let's go around and just talk a little bit about COVID. I mean, we'll talk about it. I mean, obviously it's been the story for the last year or so, but kind of from a recruiter's perspective, what have you seen? Is it as bad the market as the media would lead us to believe? Is it better than what the media might lead us to believe? What's your feeling? You're the three of you are hiring, so. Is it easier for you to fill positions? Is it more difficult? Maybe just share your thoughts from a big picture perspective. So, Leah, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I was definitely not anticipating the reality. I thought it was going to be a very heavily employer market, meaning that there would be a lot of really great candidates and just easy to pick everybody up. And I was surprised when I think that, and I don't really know how to describe it, to be honest, maybe like a hybrid market, because there's a lot of great candidates out there, but they're very interested, from my experience, very values-based now. So they've really taken the time to really think about what it is that they want and where they want to end up. And so I haven't stopped hiring at my previous position or where I am now. And so there's just amazing talent out there. And I think it almost makes it harder, because it's like you have to sift through everyone who's fantastic, and just make sure you find that right culture addition to your team. And I mean, I can even speak from someone that was job hunting for a while. There's actually a lot of roles out there. There's no shortage of it, which I'm surprised. And again, maybe I'm speaking to it from more of a professional lens than some of the other industries, but that's my experience across Canada, not just Vancouver.
Great. And Colleen, what are you seeing? How are you feeling over the last year?
You know, at first, there was a lot of uncertainty. So I would say things definitely seemed to pause for a good couple of months. But I think once we got our bearings and we were all integrated, working from home effectively, the business that I support, so I lead for Eastern Canada, the environment and infrastructure business. So fortunately, the government's been putting quite a bit of money into public infrastructure and aging infrastructure. So we've continued to really grow through this market with various science and engineering related roles. And I also support the mining industry, so that sector as well. And with the price of gold going up, we've been seeing quite an increase in mining-oriented recruitment requirements. So I'd have to say, fortunately for our business, it's been fairly steady, and the company's done a fantastic job of helping employees through this period by providing a lot of support and engagement. I would say what I've seen as a recruiter is definitely a spike in the number of applicants that are applying for jobs. Some qualified, some not qualified. So quite a mixture. There seems to be a lot of movement in the market, people who are employed and not employed. So definitely from a volume perspective, there seems to be a lot of applications coming in.
Okay, good. And geographically across Canada, or more specifically Greater Toronto area, or what geographic area are you referring to?
Well, for me, I support Eastern Canada, so I go through Atlantic provinces, Quebec and Ontario. Ontario is where a lot of the business is these days, considering the various rail, transit, road, highway, bridges projects that are underway. So we've seen quite a spike. I would say my colleagues out west are seeing the same, in probably more BC than I'd say Calgary and Alberta, but definitely in our business group, our business line, where it would be consistent.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. And Marlon, what have you been seeing?
So what we've been seeing, actually, for sure, it was an uncertain time for candidates. I mean, we've seen, the first thing we saw was a spike in unemployment, especially in Quebec, probably Canada overall. I think the CBRE, I think it's called on your side, CB, yeah. We kind of started competing against the government a little bit at some point, where we all thought as an employer that we would be jumping in the market and then we would get a lot of applicants and so on. But it had the reverse effect. Technically, candidates were more specific on what type of job they wanted to have, and they were more they knew what they wanted. They wouldn't just accept any jobs just to have a job. And this is a little bit, it joins a little bit what the type of generation that we're in, which is great. They're selecting their jobs and so on. So we did see a spike a little bit into the applicant flow, but it still made the hiring a little more selective, because candidates are selective, and as an employer we realized that we needed to adjust ourselves also to the competition and what the competition is actually doing, to make sure that we're still an attractive employer. So I think we learned a lot how to reinvent ourselves in that period of time as an employer. But also, I think on the candidate side, we saw great talent coming through. And now it was our job on our side to make sure that we had something to sell, if I can say, because they're selecting us as an employer, not just accepting a job. So yeah.
And were you finding that candidates were selective whether they were working or not working, or one of the or both?
I'll tell you that we saw a lot more unemployed candidate than employed candidate, because in certain time you're not sure if you want to leave your job or at that time. So that I would say would be until October approximately. But out of those unemployed people, we've seen a lot coming out of province. So a lot of people willing to relocate to Montreal in Ontario and Alberta and BC mainly. That's what we've seen. And the selectiveness was mainly among those people, because I'm changing province, but I also want to make sure that I get that right job for my family, and I'm not just moving across for nothing. That's mainly what we've seen. So yeah.
Okay, excellent.
And
Leah,
to that, Marc, I mean, I completely agree with what Marlon said. We had to look at who we were as a company and if we wanted to pivot or not. Were you going to stay like traditional brick and mortar and recruit locally or expect people to relocate? Or were you going to go virtual and allow people to work anywhere and remote in? And so that's a discussion that you had to have. And what else were you going to do to attract yourself? Because like I said, it wasn't a straight employer's market. It definitely changed. The other thing I would say that I noticed is there was actually a lot of discouragement with some of the job hunters, and it was really having to lean into like your empathy as like a recruiter, interviewer, hiring manager, and just, you know, I know that I was really trying to help them get through the process so that they could put their best foot forward, because it's hard when you're applying for a lot of places and it's just not working out because of the national climate.
Right. Good points. Colleen, you've been in the industry a long time. I mean, what have you seen as change for a job seeker? You know, we have different generations. We have the pandemic that's just been through. You know, what have you felt that job seekers may not be doing well, or that you would suggest that they should do more of or better of? Be better at?
That's a big question.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Well, you've seen the changes, right? I mean, I've been in recruiting
for a few years. Yeah.
We've both been in recruiting for a long time. I mean, you know, I've seen the changes. I'm sure you've seen all kinds of different changes. But what are you sensing? What are you feeling like? I mean, Leah and Marlon said how people are maybe a little bit more selective than they were before. I mean, what's your take on it?
I would agree with Leah and Marlon. I am seeing, employers having to embrace a lot more remote working and flexibility. The long gone are the days in some organizations where you have to sit at a desk and your manager's behind you watching you. It's definitely an evolving environment, and that engagement is changing. And I see applicants at all different, or candidates at all different levels of their career really have an appetite for that too, like that freedom, that flexibility. I'm hearing people asking about, as an employer, core business hours. When can you log in? When can you log out? How much flexibility can you give me? I'm working from home and I'm juggling a family, and I need some flexibility. How can you accommodate me? So I'm seeing a lot more from the candidate side, requests for accommodation. And the employer adapting to that, because it's not a one-off request. It seems to be coming in quite often. I'm also seeing technology. So, you've got your AI components to an applicant's job search, but also a recruiter's ability to screen out who's applying. So I'm seeing that applicants are getting a lot more savvy with their outreach and maybe tricking the system a bit. They know keywords are important, so they're throwing them in their applications to get through the gatekeeper and the first level of automation. So I'm seeing quite a few different techniques that you have to adapt to as a recruiter and an employer. But yeah, over the years, it changes all the time, right?
Yeah. And Marlon, you've had to accommodate to job seekers as well, like hours and work-life balance and so on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, so what we saw was we had more applicants, of course, that were applying to different type of jobs within the bank, which before it wasn't the same. You found an IT job, but now it's they realize that they have more skills on applying at other departments and so on. So they're discovering themselves, if we can say. But we had to adapt multiple ways. Actually, we adapted our onboarding process, which is now remote. We ship to your computer. We had to adapt on hours also. People having families and so on, and we had to make it okay for hiring managers to be comfortable with that, and for managers also on their day-to-day, and to be comfortable that people are logging off at odd times and having to take off during certain times, having kids and so on. And we also had to make sure that as an employer, I think it was the right moment to enhance our technology, bringing in more tools like WebEx, Teams. Before it was just the classic Skype, and then we had to reinvent ourselves on that technology and say, okay, well, we need to be more inclusive that way. And that was pretty much also the same time where, well, we were adapting to everybody, and where the question came in on what are we actually really doing about diversity and inclusion, and how do we actually include people if they have a handicap, and we're remote, so we can't see these things. So what are we actually doing for this population, and are we actually really as inclusive as we say? Do we hire enough women in the proper jobs and so on? So we really had to really not reinvent the wheel, but really see if everything we were doing physically was not affected by working remote, and making sure we reinforce those things because they were part of the values of what the business is embracing. So yeah, but we had to adapt massively around these things, not to lose our core values.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Colleen, anything to add to that? Marlon?
I would agree in terms of adapting to the technology internally to accommodate video interviewing and using Microsoft Teams. From an employer perspective, we put a lot of training around with our managers to coach them on how to effectively interview remotely, so that it's a different experience. So keeping the candidate experience in mind, and being engaging and sharing your video, and being mindful that interruptions happen. Technology is not always our friend. So we most definitely, but one other trend that I noticed in the applicants' appetite would be development. In our industry, with our organization, applicants or candidates that were very keen to understand my career path, where once I join, how do I elevate my career from there? What training is available? What support is available? So it's really smart candidate pool coming through that seems to really understand, for the most part, what they're looking for and what they need to help them get there, and they're asking for it. Whereas, we joke, been in the game for a long time. If I go back so many years ago, as applicants, we might not have asked those questions. We just would have been grateful to have a job or a job interview. Whereas now it's a lot more of a conversation versus an interview, sort of, knock knock 19 whatever wants their interview techniques back. So it's more of a conversation.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's good. Good points. So my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm here joined by the panel: Colleen O'Hara, senior strategic recruiter; Leah Penrose from Vancouver, a Spring Activator, people operations manager; and Marlon is talent acquisition manager at BNB Paribas in Montreal. So we have across the country. You can certainly ask questions. So just kind of further to what Colleen said, Leah. Vijaya has asked a question about what's the dress code? Do I have to be formal or semi-casual when speaking on Zoom? What's your take? What would you recommend? Does it depend on the job? Does it depend on the person that you're interviewing? What are your thoughts?
So for myself, for first round interviews, I go blind. So even though it's video, I have the cameras off because I want to try and make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. So it doesn't really matter to me what you're wearing on that first interview. I would say though that the same general quote unquote rules apply. Dress for the position or a step above that you are applying for based on the company. It's no different being in Zoom than there. And if you're going to do the business mullet, the appropriate shirt on top and sweatpants on the bottom, just make sure your camera is angled properly.
Yeah. Any horror stories yet? Have you had any? Well, you turned the cameras off, you said, right? So
for the first round, yeah. For the second round and beyond, we have cameras on. No real horror stories yet. Interesting backgrounds in people's houses. I'm very curious, so I always like looking on people's bookshelves and stuff. But no horror stories.
So
no judgment is there. Just curious.
Do you have a preference? Virtual background, white wall behind them?
You know what? I think 2020 for me and even 2021 is really proven that we're whole people. We don't turn off who we are when we clock in. I want to see your background because I also get very distracted if you're like this floating head coming in and out of the virtual background. I want to be able to focus on you and, try and have like as less or at least distracting as possible background, but show us your home. It's fine. You're real. We're real. You're in our home too.
Yeah, for sure. Marlon or Colleen, any other tips? This comes up a lot on at our virtual job fairs, at our other panels. Like how should you conduct yourself on video? What are those really one or two things that people really have to do? Anything you can share? Anything that stands out to you? Somebody you've interviewed that you go, wow, that person was memorable.
For sure. Colleen, or I can take this one, but okay. My first thing is when you show up at an interview, you're prepared pretty much, and that's pretty much what matters at this point. The dress code. What would you do if you were in person, right? You're always going to an interview and to impress, or at least if you don't get the job, well, they'll remember you. That's always what I say. So if you are going to put your camera on, then do it at your best. It's really that, like you said, it's if you're going to be well dressed up on the up, but not wear any any pants or anything like that, that's your call. But at least you send a very good image to the interviewers, and also that you took the time to prepare yourself. And of course, come in with questions, the regular, like just like if you were in person, pretty much. The background really is really up to you. I would say your posture talks a lot. Don't be sitting. I've seen stuff where people would be sitting in their beds or sitting on couches and so on. You can be dressed as you want. If you are sitting on your bed and people see a pillow right near, it's like it's not a casual interview. It's really trying to sit at the desk and having a good posture and so on, right? But at the end of the day, you're in your home, so whatever your home looks like, we don't really care as employer. We just want to make sure that the person we're talking to is professional, is ready to talk to us, and the rest really doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had to move from in-person interview to being in a box, right? And this is your box, and that's what your representation is, and what it's all about. Colleen, any other tips, anything, do's, don'ts for job seekers who are watching about video interviews, anything along that line?
Well, first I'll say I agree with Martin and Leah, both good points. And us too, come as you are. Keep in mind the type of organization you're applying to as well. Once COVID's behind us and life resumes to normal, and there might be that expectation to have face time in the organization. So if a corporate culture where you tend to get in a suit and tie every day isn't for you, then, that dress code's going to be that dress code when life resumes to normal. So I would just say, be mindful of what you're choosing to wear and how you're choosing to represent yourself based on the opportunity that you're expressing interest in.
Okay, terrific. So let's talk about resumes then. Let's spend a few minutes talking about resumes, what you're seeing that's worked, what hasn't worked, trends. I know seeing it as well firsthand about putting an address on, not putting address on, an address, not address, but an address on an address, or just putting their city. Some people don't put their city on. So what are the trends that you might see? Open to anybody to answer.
I would say, if not putting the address on is comfortable for you, we have to redact your personal information when sharing your information internally. So you'll save us a step by having to remove it, because we use a large applicant tracking system. So your personal details are in the system. They don't necessarily have to be on your resume. So that's up to you. But as part of our privacy efforts, we do redact personal information off the resume before sharing internally. One thing that is I would recommend is people get fancy with their resumes, and they put all these images or logos and things like this. With our applicant tracking tool, that formatting goes sideways. So it actually kind of gets a little difficult to properly read a resume. Sometimes they don't load very quickly, which as a recruiter is kind of a pet peeve, if I was to be honest. So I would suggest, keep it simple, keep it clean, spell check, grammar check. If you're applying to an engineering firm, you don't want spelling errors because that leads them to believe attention to detail might be questionable. So just, have a friend read it before you apply, and make sure grammar and spelling and formatting is clean.
Sure. Any other tips, Leah?
I fully agree with Colleen. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is I have a keen attention to detail. And like in the first sentence, it's a spelling or grammar mistake. I'm like, goodbye, sorry, I can't, no matter how glowing it is. The other thing is coming from a DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion lens again, in Canada, maybe this is me, but I don't want to see your picture on your resume, and I don't need to know your marital status or any other personal information. It actually, it just don't put it. We don't need it. It doesn't help. It doesn't serve any purpose. That may be the norm in other countries, but not here, because we really are trying to be as diverse and inclusive as possible, and that could actually, I don't want to say work against you, because nobody that I know would use it against you, but we don't pay attention to it. I also try not to look at people's LinkedIn until after the first round as well. I know everyone else has different practices, so that's just mine. But yeah, it's not necessary. But I still do like a cover letter. I'm old school in that sense. Okay,
great. Marlon, how about you? What appeals to you? What doesn't appeal to you?
For sure. So my open advice, actually, so not really related to how we recruit at the bank, but really overall what I've seen is just like Lee and Colleen said, is really your formatting matters. Your spelling mistakes and so on are big no. People in marketing tend to really want to use formats that are I would say not necessarily classic in the industry, but I would say stick to Word and PDFs. Try to avoid all the Adobe designs and so on, because just take for granted that you're sending this email to someone and that they need to be able to open the document. Just make sure that you save this document not into an Apple format, but really into a doc format, because I've received resumes into Apple, and not a lot of companies are using Apple in the business. It's 50-50, so you just want to make sure that your format is your document can be open. In terms of diversity and inclusion, for sure, take off your picture, take off all these things, as we said. But as a candidate, you just need to know that people have unconscious bias, and people can have them, and you just want to make sure that your resume compares very well to anybody out there. And that's it, not based on your age, not based on your family members or anything like that. But also you want to make sure that you're as true as possible on your resume. It's the bank side coming back in me again, but unfortunately security matters in some organization. And you want to make sure that your LinkedIn titles are the same on your resume. What you are disclosing on your LinkedIn is public, and what on your resume, well, if you were to double check this information, it needs to match. You want to make sure that everything on your schooling and everything matches in terms of dates and so on. So all these things matters for the employer at the end of the process. And we have seen unfortunate situations where people were not true in the dates and so on, and then it started creating as an employer, and it starts creating a climate of trust is at risk with you as a candidate, and you just want to make sure that as a candidate, when you're applying, you send that trust automatically already when sending your resume out. But all the rest, I would say, just keep it simple. I've seen stuff around the number of pages. I don't know for you guys. I don't care about the number of pages. I would say just keep the information as simple as possible, and if it goes on 3 pages, then it goes on 3 pages. But I rather to have a resume that's true, that has all the information, that's crafted based on the job description and based on what you're applying on, than having a resume where I have to fight with in terms of formatting and fight with in terms of, is this information relevant, not relevant, and so on. So yeah.
Great. Excellent. Great feedback. So Colleen, I'm a candidate. I really think I'm a great for a position that you have. I've applied online. I may have sent the resume, but I'm really excited. I think I'm a great fit. What do you suggest I should do? Should I follow up? Should I phone somebody? Should I reach out through LinkedIn? Like, what would turn you off? What would kind of make you think, wow, this person is really great and really interested? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good question. So, and it happens a lot. So I'm familiar with this scenario. So yeah, we get a lot of people applying to our organization. One job posting, depending on the level, could have 300-400 applicants in it. So, unfortunately, there are a lot of folks who are not successful through that process. And it is an automated messaging that gives them the thanks, but we've filled the position, or thanks, you haven't been selected, with very little to no feedback. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to give a lot of feedback to everyone who applies, but certainly if you reach out, it could be my job, it could be one of 40 members of my team, or however many there are of us across the Americas. So it would be difficult for you to map out who to reach out to, I would think. If you're keen to network, advice I give people is, be deliberate. So decide, this is the organization I want to work for. Align your skills and qualifications with the role description. They're written there for a reason. We're not flexible with a lot of that. It is just what we have to hire for to be able to deliver on our projects that we have. So I would say align your skill sets with what the qualifications are asking for on the role description. And if you're really, if Wood is one of your top companies that you really want to work for, go into LinkedIn and do some mapping, figure out who in the business, who on the operations side, maybe not recruitment, but operations side, could you reach out to and see if maybe they'd be open to having a virtual coffee with you, see what, type of business we're doing. Try and network with multiple people, not just people in HR and recruitment. I know in our organization there are a lot of people who are very open to doing that, all dependent on people's capacity again. So, we're super busy, so we appreciate the patience if we don't get back in a timely manner, because it's really busy. But we will try and get back as quickly as we can.
That's great. That's great tips. Leah, networking in post-COVID, when you can't go to events, you can't shake people's hands. What are some takeaways? LinkedIn, so other social media? Do you reach out to people that way? What's your suggestion or suggestions?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still a big fan of LinkedIn, but I think you need to do it in an intentional way. Like just sending a request without a note, it may get you a connection, it may not. And I think you need to be open. You can't just be asking. Like it needs to also be like, what can you give, and what is your intent on the connection request? Because again, there's a lot of people out there. I appreciate the connections, and I'm happy to help learn and do what I can. But in saying that, please follow the proper process that has been laid out for how to apply. Like, don't try and backdoor it, because I'm not going to acknowledge it that way. It creates work, and it kind of annoys me, to be honest. Like, just read the instructions. And then, yeah, I also think webinars and conferences, if you can go to those and connect and kind of hang out, there's lots of actual virtual networking events around by different companies that are posting them. They're great. I'm actually surprisingly quite the introvert, and I find these networking events with the screen is actually it adds a level of safety to it. Like you don't have to like shake. I don't know. It's nice. Try it out.
Everybody's on equal footing, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to do that awkward walk away, handshake, can I interrupt? It's just, it's there. But be intentional, thank people still, all general rules still apply. Just transfer what you know to a virtual realm. Like you wouldn't just walk up to somebody and like expect them to be your friend without giving them context.
That's great. So we've got about 15 minutes left. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. The panel, Colleen O'Hara, senior strategic recruiter, Leah Penrose, Spring Activator, people operations manager from Vancouver, and Marlon, talent acquisition manager at BNP Paribas in Montreal. So Marlon, we have a question for you on the chat. And by the way, if you're watching, you have questions, anything about interviews, resumes, this is your chance. We've got, as I mentioned, about 15 minutes left. So you want to ask away. So Marlon, we have a question here about, can you please share any tips on how to find an employer, a bank from outside Canada, whether it's a bank or just in general, like if somebody's coming from outside of Canada, what would you suggest they do?
So if they're coming out from outside of Canada, so I would assume this question is related to someone already outside of Canada. Unfortunately, the first thing here is immigration. Unfortunately, it's really, are you eligible to work in Canada overall? That's the first thing I would do. And the second thing is I would target banks that are really open to having people immigrate, because certain skills in the banking area, like cybersecurity and so on, sometimes we don't have these skills in Canada, and sometimes companies are open to pinpoint recruit people outside of the country. My first advice there is, if your will is to move to Canada, is start your process. And it's always easier for an employer to assist you in that process after you started it than start it for you. That's pretty much what I say all the time. So yeah.
Okay, terrific. And by the way, TorontoJobs.ca also presents a little plug here, the Immigrating to Canada virtual conference. This is for people who are looking to move to Canada. It's all about moving, the job market, how to go about coming to Canada. That happens on Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. As well, from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern time. So you can find out more information about that event at TorontoJobs.ca/NEWS news, TorontoJobs.ca/news. So Colleen, and I'm trying to give everybody some equal time here. What about offers? Candidate gets an offer. Should they, I'm sure you've been in, I've been in, where people feel that it's a time to negotiate anything and everything under the sun. Some people accept it as is and just kind of move on. What are your suggestions on people when they receive an offer? What should they do? What are the steps? What should they think about? Should they negotiate, and so on?
Well, I think before you get to the offer stage, I would just back up the process a little bit. And, if you're working with an in-house recruiter or even an external recruiter, having those conversations throughout the process around your expectations and what you're looking for and what's important to you. And then if it's an in-house recruiter, they can gauge and evaluate that and ensure it's aligned throughout. So managing your expectations. I know in many of the process I've done, I've been part of a lot of different negotiations. Nothing too outlandish, because again, we're managing expectations throughout the process. But yes, I would think, if you're speaking with a recruiter and the offer comes and it's not what you spoke to the recruiter about, then that's a pretty good opportunity to have a conversation to say, well, remember when we talked about, I had shared with you, I'm expecting. I would certainly encourage you to have those conversations. And beyond like the dollars and the cents, talk about your vacation entitlement, your start date. If they're proposing an unreasonable start date that could potentially put your relationship with your current employer in jeopardy, have the courage to kind of just ask the question and push back, because sometimes it's just an administrative error. So I would say, for sure, have the conversation. But again, hopefully you're having the conversation throughout the process.
Right. So what if you're a candidate, you're expecting an offer, and you're looking for X dollars, and you're really excited. They tell you that you're gonna get an offer, and then the offer comes in and it's X minus something, right? And you're just deflated because you're not sure. Like, should you accept it? Would you go back? And then they might say, like, are you afraid that they might say take it away? They take it away. Like, would you ever take an offer away because they come back and negotiate on salary? I know that's more than just salary. I get it, but salary always is like, this is the number that I'm going to get paid. What are your comments on that?
Personally, I've never seen an offer rescinded because somebody tried to come back and talk about salary. If anything, I've seen it be like, sorry, this is all we budgeted for. This is what we were expecting. I realize it's not what you're looking for. We're really interested in you. You could potentially have a longer career here, yada, yada. Hopefully it's not miles apart. And then it's up to the applicant at that point to either accept or not accept. But no, I would say have the courage to ask for what you're looking for. And if it doesn't align with your conversations you've been having, then, it's your time too. If you're talking to the recruiter and you're looking for X and all this other is important to you, and the recruiter's not being transparent on the other end to say that, well, that's within our range, or yes, that works for us too. Now, they might, due to privacy issues, not be able to give you specific numbers in response through that process, but they can confirm if it is aligned. And if you're not getting that, maybe just respectfully ask, does this align? Am I within your ballpark? And that could save a lot of people a lot of time right up front.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Leah, anything, or Marlon, were you going to add something?
Yeah, if I can add something on that, there is candidates in general would give their salary expectations, and it is to the recruiter to say, yes, you're outside of the range or not. And I think that transparency is something that we need to see a little bit more on employer side. But what I would also say is ask for what you want, really knowing that you've done your research. And it comes back a little bit to the researching things before submitting your resumes. But there is something that we don't take in consideration enough is the ratio. We hear a lot about the ratio from the market. The market pays this, but there is also the ratio to the industry. What a nonprofit organization would pay isn't really not the same thing as a bank would pay or a company in construction. So we really need to know that you can't be asking the same thing depending on the industry. And that's where your research comes in as a professional selling yourself on the market, because that's how you get the leeway to be able to negotiate and knowing that you're joining the proper employer. And also ask your questions around benefits, because sometimes the salary is one thing, but there is also benefits around anything related to pension plan and all these type of things. This is where you ask your question, and you are free to ask those questions in the first interview if the question is raised by the company or by the recruiter. And that's where you need to dig and know if you really want to waste your time, if I can say, going into the interview, and if it's part of your criteria, because you don't look crazy if you're actually choosing. That's okay. It's part of what we do, and the job is for you to accept an opportunity on a long term, not changing after 5 months, 3 months, or anything like that.
So how would you
as well, that salary is one component. Literally almost everything on a employment agreement is negotiable, from benefits, vacation, everything, right? So if salary isn't the end all and be all for everyone, maybe it's time off. Like maybe they don't have anything in their budget to be able to give you bigger salary, but you can get a few more days off. So what is it? And make sure you find that alignment.
So what, maybe Marlon, you can answer, or anybody really on the panel, is how do I know? I feel if I'm a candidate, I'm a job seeker, I feel like I'm up against the wall in the sense that you have all the information. I have no information. I know what I was making in my last job. I know what I'm kind of looking for now, but where do I get information? Where would you suggest I get information on what salaries are out there, market salaries, what an industry pays? Do you have any resources, any information that you can share or direct people to?
So several informations actually. So part of your researches, and we all know them, the agencies out there, the Randstads. I know Randstad has a salary guide that you can go and research online. Robert Half has one for the finance and office environment, where you can actually research, and actually they have a calculator online now where you see where you could be. And also Nuveo, and I will put it in the chat there, that you can also go and research on. And yeah, so basically the thing to keep in mind is, yes, the salary that you're seeing up there, it's great, but keep in mind that those are data of everybody combined. Then you need to reflect on yourself on, okay, how many years of experience do I really have in what is asked? And really, do I think that I can ask this amount of dollars based on also where I was on the market or where I am right now? Should I be asking for more? Is it justified? That's when you need to research all these things. But yeah, it's there are a lot of tools out there. It's just a matter of finding the proper one per job again and per industry also.
Terrific. So we only have 5 minutes left here. So if you have any burning questions that you want to ask, make sure to put them in the event or the stage area, and I will get there. So we do have a question with regards to ATS, which is Applicant Tracking System, just in case you're not familiar. Can you please give tips on passing by this gatekeeper? My resume is good. Keywords have been put on there, but still no positive responses. What suggestions would you have for EB or IB? Colleen or Leah, open to anybody. No takers? Colleen, you're unmuting yourself.
I was waiting. I was like, I saw Leah reach, so I was like, I was waiting. I would just say, again, read the role description and the qualifications and make sure your background aligns to that. Often there's not a lot of flexibility when a job, in our organization anyhow, when a job's posted. Typically that's what we're looking for. So if it says 10 years and if it says a PN or if it says a particular type of project experience, those are non-negotiable items. So if you don't have them on the resume, you can't get through the gatekeeper. So I'd say as number one, just ensure your resume aligns with that role description. And on the flip side, for the points that do align, make sure they're in your resume, because a lot of our first level screening is automated. So we just do the keyword search. We're not necessarily reading every resume that comes through because we have a little bit of an automated system, which enables us to have a more fair and inclusive first level review and remove those biases because we're screening against qualifications. So if you've got the quals, make sure they're on there.
Excellent. Okay, so we got about 3 minutes left. Maybe 1 minute to each of you to wrap up. Any final thoughts, any final suggestions for job seekers? Anything from your experience that you think can really help someone get a job? Leah?
So I'm coming from it from my last job and this job from smaller startups. And you don't necessarily have to have particular qualifications or past experience, but transferable skills, especially as we transfer into like a remote work. I'm looking for more human skills. And are you trustworthy? Can you wear multiple hats? Can you manage your time more so than I can teach you how to do the technical side in my industry, in the roles that we're looking for? So make sure that in your resume and cover letter, you're saying how what you have done can translate into this. Even if you're making a career transition into a different industry, just explain it. We're not mind readers. Make it clear for us.
Excellent. Marlon?
My advice is keep it simple. It's again, we understand how stressing it is to be on the other side and having to apply on jobs and so on. But I always say that I'm a human connecting with humans. So it's really, we understand that, yes, we're the recruiters and so on, but it doesn't make us more important than you. And you really need to understand that by putting the right information into the document you're submitting, which ultimately is the resume, that's how you get the call or not. And unfortunately, it just pretty much comes down to this. So really keep it simple, keep the formatting great. And of course, on the LinkedIn question, always happy to take a connection. But again, make sure that your network is also within your network. Just don't make sure that every connection you go and get is an added value connection, not just a connection out there. That would be my advice.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And Colleen, to wrap up?
No doubt it can be daunting. They often say it's a full-time job looking for a job. So I just say, stay positive, keep connected to people, continue to network. Just don't rely on applying for jobs through the big applicant tracking tools. Network. get out to those events and conferences that are applicable to your line of work and talk to people, including recruiters and operations people, and just stay positive. I know it can be tough, but it'll be worth it when it comes together.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much to the three of you and for sharing your great tips. I know in the chat there's been a lot of great feedback. So thanks for spending the time with us. And to everybody, the Canadian Virtual Recruiters Panel, thanks for being on here. The event has been presented by TorontoJobs.ca and TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca and powered by Event Logic with a K.ca. Again, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Colleen O'Hara, senior strategic recruiter. Leah Penrose, spring activator, people operations manager, based out of Vancouver, and Colleen is based out of the Greater Toronto area, and Marlon is talent acquisition manager at BNP Paribas in Montreal. And let us know how you liked the event. You'll be getting a survey within the next 24 hours. Let us know what you thought, what you liked, what you didn't like, so we can put these on more as well. And I, again, just wanted to thank the panel. I wanted to thank the team behind the scenes, Jesse, Alex, Sandra, Ann, and Rachel. I also want to let you know that if you are looking for a job in the Toronto area, you can post your resume on TorontoJobs.ca, TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca. If you are an entrepreneur, you're looking to start up a business, or you're a business owner already. And if you'd like to be part of a future virtual event, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. You can check out our upcoming events by visiting TorontoJobs.ca/news, and you can also find out information about our other upcoming virtual events. We have the Canadian Virtual Recruiters Conference. So if you're interested in recruiting, or you are a recruiter watching, that happens Tuesday, March 9th. The TO Tech virtual hiring event is for tech individuals, happens Wednesday, March 10th. The Student Career Conference happens Thursday, March 18th. And the Canadian Virtual Career Conference happens Wednesday, March 31st. And all these events are presented by TorontoJobs.ca. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and check out our TorontoJobs.ca YouTube channel as well. And I do have a book. I'm going to give out some random copies to people that ask questions, but it's called Tales from the Recruiter, and you can check it out at talesfromtherecruiter.ca. You have another 10 minutes. You can check out our expo area. We do have some exhibitors and sponsors that have also left some videos and are sharing information. So feel free, if you're watching, you can check out our expo. You can get there by clicking on Expo on the left-hand side of the screen. And I want to thank you for being on here, and thank you for all of you, the three of you, for being on the panel, and hope to see you in the future. Everybody stay safe and be good. And thanks again.
Thank you, Marc. Bye, everyone.